Chapter 4 The Child of Mew. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 4 of my What If Pokemon Raised Ash story. If you're new to this series, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. Ash and Inazu weave through the crowd of partygoers toward the large double doors at the far end of the ballroom, where Rai and Mew are waiting for them next to the door. Upon their arrival, Mew leads them out of the ballroom into the roof, where they'll have a better view of the fireworks. While they wait, Ash and Inazu turn to the adults, thanking them for letting them stay to the end of the festival. Mew smiles at their children while Rai says something unexpected. Valor. Ash stares at Rai, his mouth slowly falling open, while Inazu's eyes widen to a comically large size. Rai, or Valor, simply smiles, saying that it's about time they knew. Together, the brothers' faces split into wide smiles before they tell their own names to the now official newest member of their family. Mew, taking a cue from their children, tells Valor their own name of Memoriam, which causes Ash and Inazu to realize that they've never actually heard their Mappa's name before now. Before the conversation can continue, the first of the fireworks begins, drawing everyone's attention. Watching the fireworks together with his family, Ash thinks to himself that this just might be the best day ever. Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, Go, Chloe, and Kid are watching the fireworks through the window. The bright bursts of colour work wonders on their moods after missing the chance to talk to the forest boy twice now. As they watch the spectacle, Go's eyes catch on something on the roof of the palace, just left of the fireworks. There, sitting calmly and facing the fireworks, is the forest boy, accompanied by an androgynous adult with blue hair, the Pikachu from before, and a Lucario. Excited, he points them out to Chloe and Kid, the former of whom is just as excited as he is. Kid, however, spots something that Go has missed. Crawling across the roof to the small group is a figure dressed in a black coat, with a hood drawn over their head. A feeling of unease settles in the pit of her stomach as she tells the children to stay in the ballroom before quickly leaving, tying her hair up into its signature buns as she goes. Something about that figure doesn't sit right with her. Back over with the little family, they are watching with smiles as the last of the fireworks fizzle out, until Valor suddenly stands to his feet. Turning to look behind them, he tells the group that he can sense someone trying to sneak up on them. Scrambling to their feet, they watch as someone steps out of the shadows, into the light of the moon. Their black coat quickly explains why they hadn't seen them right away. They lift their head, allowing the family to see the brown hair poking out from under their hood, and the white and black eyeless mask covering their face. Ash and Inazu stiffen as Valor and Memoriam step protectively in front of the children. In a voice devoid of emotion, but clearly female, the woman in front of them speaks. Hand over the Mew. The family stands silently, unable to think of a way to respond. With the mask on, it's unlikely that the woman would see them sign, but none of them are able to speak without telepathy, and that's absolutely out. Before they can think of a way to avoid a confrontation, the woman brings out a Jolteon and Glaceon. Hand over the Mew, or it will be taken by force. Ash bristles at his Mappa being called an it, his eyes flashing blue for a moment in anger. However, before he can move to give this woman a piece of his mind, she attacks, commanding her Jolteon to launch a Thunderbolt at Valor and Glaceon an Ice Beam at Memoriam. The family all quickly jump out of the way of the attack. However, in his panic, Inazu jumps in the wrong direction, now putting him at the edge of the roof. Before he can try to get to safer ground, the Glaceon slams into him, sending him tumbling off the roof. Ash, in a moment of panic, forgets to keep a hold on his powers, blowing open his mental channels and allowing anyone nearby to hear his horrified cry of his brother's nickname. He dashes for the ledge, fully preparing to jump off after Inazu, only to freeze in shock as a pair of Weavile jump onto the roof, closely followed by a woman wearing a bright pink jumpsuit and carrying Inazu in one arm. Before Ash can recover from his shock, the woman hands Inazu to him, while telling him to get to his parent and run for it. She'll hold off the one in the mask. She turns to face the masked woman, but stops when Ash grabs her wrist. Then, without saying a word, he presses something into her hand before running towards his Mappa and Valor, who are also making their way to the boys. As soon as they are close enough, Memoriam grabs their children and Valor and teleports them away from the fight and back home. It's only as everyone has caught their breath that Valor realizes that he's missing one of Sir Aaron's gloves. Back on the roof of the palace, the masked woman leans down to pick up a long blue glove that the Lucario from earlier had been carrying in its belt. Behind her, Glaceon and Jolteon battle the interlopers Weavile, keeping them away from their master. Without looking behind her at the battle, she calls for her Pokemon to follow her as she runs to the edge of the roof and jumps off into the shadows below. Without hesitation, Jolteon and Glaceon break away from the battle and follow, jumping off the roof after her. Knowing that she won't be able to follow the masked woman with her dark coat hiding her in the shadows, Kid instead looks to see what the forest boy had given her. There in her hand is a small crystal flower. Frowning in confusion, Kid gives one last glance to where the woman had run before turning and walking back to the ballroom. Meanwhile, the woman kneels down with the glove in her hand, commanding her Jolteon to start tracking. A few minutes later, Kid enters the throne room to discover that it's been completely cleared out, save for Queen Eileen, her maid, Go, and Chloe. Noticing her return, they all quickly approach her, Go and Chloe asking if the forest boy and those that were with him are okay. She quickly gets them to calm down, before telling them that the boy and his family were able to escape. She then turns to the queen and her maid, telling them that she'd heard the masked woman mention Mew, and asking if they know anything. Sighing, Eileen looks up at the large painting of Mew and the Tree of Beginning. She tells them that Mew had once had a long-standing tradition of coming to the palace to play games and make mischief, often spiriting away old and abandoned toys never to be seen again. But suddenly, 9 years ago, Mew's pattern changed, and it wasn't just toys being taken. Old clothes, spare fabric, and sewing materials all started to go missing too. Then, 3 years ago, rumors began to circulate about a young, black-haired boy wearing worn and patched-up clothes, being spotted with the mythical. A year after that, a small family of a parent and child, who both seemed to be mute, accompanied by a Lucario and Pikachu, began to show up at the festival. It didn't take long for people to begin connecting the two, claiming that the parent is Mew in disguise and the boy is their child. Clearly, these rumors have spread further than she thought. Had she known that they would bring a hunter to Mew's doorstep, she would have stamped down on the rumors immediately. Frowning in concern, Kid turns to Go and Chloe, telling them that they're going to need to step up their schedule. If the masked woman is truly after Mew, then she'll be heading for the Tree of Beginning. They need to get there first and warn them. With that, they begin to prepare to leave immediately, while also updating Gary on the situation. The next morning, Ash wakes up feeling groggy and tired. Looking around, he can see that the rest of his family isn't faring much better. After what happened last night, no one had been able to get much sleep, too stressed out and wound up from the sudden attack. Ash looks over to his Mappa, anxiety clawing his insides. He knows that this isn't the first time that some human has tried to capture his Mappa, but it's the first time it's happened since he was born. Before Ash was born, they would venture out into the world looking for adventure, often going months, if not years, before returning to the tree. After Ash, however, they stopped completely, placing Ash's and then Inazu's well-being above all else, and restricting journeys from the tree to safe family day trips. So, this is the first time that he's seen a human try to take his Mappa away from them. It was scary. It had even brought back his childhood nightmares of being surrounded by fire, crying out for his Mappa as everything burns around him, the smoke making his lungs burn and the heat almost enough to burn his skin. But no matter how much he cries, no one comes. The memory of it makes him shudder. Walking up behind his Mappa, he wraps his arms around their middle, startling them. Looking at their son over their shoulder, Memoriam asks if he's okay. Ash gives a shaking nod, not letting go. "I'm just really glad that you're here." A small, bittersweet smile comes to Mew's face as they turn and gently stroke his hair. 2 days have passed since the Hero Festival, and Kid, Go, and Chloe have finally arrived at the base of the Tree of Beginning. It had been a very long, very nerve-wracking drive, but they made it in the end. Hopefully, they're not too late to warn the family, or Mew, of the masked woman. They stand at the base of the massive rocks that surround the tree itself, trying to figure out how they're going to get in, let alone bring Kid's car, when the ground beneath them begins to shake. Reacting fast, Kid tackles the children to the side, just as a figure comes bursting out of the ground right below where they had been standing. As the group turns to look at what had come out of the ground, the figure lands, revealing itself to be a Regirock. It turns to them, its eyes flashing as it steps towards them. They all quickly get to their feet, their hands flying to the Pokeballs at their belts as they prepare to fight. Only, instead of attacking them, it points at Kid, or rather, at her pocket. Reaching in, she pulls out the crystal flower that the forest boy had given her. Leaning in closer, the Regirock examines it before its eyes flash and it leans back. Turning around, it gestures for them to follow. Confused, but understanding that the legendary is not going to hurt them, they follow. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Tree of Beginning, Ash and Inazu are having a game of tag, chasing each other through the endless winding tunnels that make up their home. They've just reached the part of the tunnels where it opens up into a ravine, with hundreds of crystal roots connecting one side to the other. They're just about to jump onto the first crystal bridge when a voice calls out to them from behind. Turning around, they come face to face with the tree's resident Registeel, Mercury. Ash had felt quite proud when he came up with that nickname. He had no idea why it had caused the other to sigh in that way Valor does whenever the boys are doing something ridiculous. Looking the boys over, Mercury tells them that their parent is looking for them, and they don't seem particularly happy. Eyes widening in concern, Ash offers his arm to Inazu to let him climb onto him, so that they can levitate up the ravine to get back faster. All the way back to their cave, the boys are trying to think of what they could have done to get in trouble this time. Entering the main chamber of their home, they see their Mappa floating there, arms crossed while leveling their children with an unimpressed look. The boys gulp. Boys, care to explain why I was just informed of a group of humans carrying a heart flower? The Tree of Beginning is absolutely amazing. There's no two ways about it. It's full of Pokemon that should have gone extinct centuries ago. The glowing blue crystals seem to act as a substitute sun, allowing plants to grow in abundance. Kid is itching to pull out her little drones to begin scouting the place and gathering data to send back to Banks and Gary to analyze. But there'll be time for that later. She hopes. Right now, they have other things to deal with. One of which being a question that Go voices out loud, but she's been contemplating since the Regirock began to lead them into the tree. Why had it reacted the way it had to the flower? She'd gotten it from the forest boys, so had he known that they'd be coming and had given it to them so Regirock wouldn't attack them? Had he known that the masked woman would be coming, and this was his way of asking for help? She tells her young assistants that the only way they're going to get any answers is if they continue to follow the Regirock. Hopefully, it's leading them to the forest boy or to Mew, or both. Then, they'll be able to get their answers. And if they don't know that the masked woman is coming after them, warn them. Ash's ears are ringing by the time Mew finishes their lecture. He knows that heart flowers are the only thing that can allow unfamiliar humans to enter the Tree of Beginning without triggering the tree's immune response. And yes, he knows that means they're not something to be handed out on a whim. But Ash still thinks that he was completely justified in giving one to the woman with the weird head wings last night. She saved Inazu after he fell off the roof. Mew tells them that they understand Ash's thought process, however, he still shouldn't just give them away on a split-second decision like that, as she won't have any idea what it is, making it very easy for her to lose it or for it to be taken from her by someone that does know. Ash asks if there are any humans that know about heart flowers that are even still alive. Before Mew can respond, a hollow feminine voice speaks above them. Looking up, they come face to mask with the woman that attacked them the night of the festival. Clutched in one hand is a crystal flower, with cracks running all along its petals and pieces missing. The masked woman pulls out 2 Pokeballs. Relinquish the Mew, or the Tree of Beginning will be destroyed. How much further is it now? Chloe rolls her eyes at her friend, telling him that he should be glad that they're getting a guided tour, because otherwise they'd be wandering around this place for even longer. Go shoots her a half-hearted glare, telling her that this is still a lot of walking, and they don't even know where the Regirock is taking them. They could be getting further away from Mew and the Forest Boy for all they know. And they need to warn them ASAP because their bickering is cut off as Kid holds up a hand for silence. For a few seconds, the two simply stand there in confusion, but then they hear it. The distant sounds of battle echoing from further up the tunnel. Without a moment's hesitation, the group all begin running towards the sound, leaving the slower Regirock behind. When they reach the end, they emerge into a cavern that may have once been cozy, covered in flowers and trees, soft light falling from the crystals in the ceiling. Now, however, the grass and flowers have been uprooted in haphazard grooves, dust, smoke, and steam choking the air. Looking further into the cavern, they can see two familiar groups. One consisting of a human boy, a Mew, a Lucario, and a Pikachu. The other, a woman dressed all in black apart from her white mask and commanding a Jolteon and Glaceon. The woman is commanding her Pokemon to attack the group of mostly Pokemon, while they fight back. Even the Forest Boy is fighting back, producing blue orbs that look similar to the move Aura Sphere and launching them at the woman and her Pokemon. With a final attack from the Pikachu and Lucario, the Glaceon and Jolteon go skidding across the ground to their master, who returns them. Just as it seems that the defenders have won, she pulls out two new Pokeballs, this time calling out a Flareon and a Leafeon. Voice cold and devoid of emotion, she orders the Leafeon to scatter leaves around the area with Razor Leaf, before telling her Flareon to light the debris with Flamethrower. Her Pokemon do so, spreading fire all over the cavern. The moment he sees the flames, the Forest Boy's eyes go wide with pure terror. He stares at the burning flames, his whole body trembling. Mew turns to the boy, wrapping their arms around his head and trying to block the side of the fire, while Pikachu quickly climbs up his back before fumbling for something at his neck, and Lucario stands protectively in front of them all. "We have to help them!" They rush forward, Kid calling out her Weavile, Chloe her Squirtle, and Go his Larvitar. While Kid's Weavile and Chloe's Squirtle put out the fire with Icy Wind and Hydro Pump, Go and Larvitar stand beside Lucario, preparing to fight back the masked woman and her evolutions. With a shout, he calls for Larvitar to use Rock Throw. Larvitar does so, tossing a rock that is the same size as him at the evolutions, who quickly dodge out of the way. However, while Flareon and Leafeon manage to get out of the way, the masked woman isn't so lucky, and the rock smacks her hand, the same one that is holding a crystal flower like the one Kid has. The woman hisses in pain as she brings her hand in front of her. The impact of the rock had clearly been the flower's final straw, as it had shattered on impact, leaving the woman's hand covered in cuts from the crystal shards. In a dull voice, the woman mutters about how the success rate of her mission has dropped to 30%, and the probability of the tree's defenses targeting her have increased to 98%. Ignoring the clear pain that her hand must be in, she pulls out the Pokeballs for both of her Pokemon and returns them. Without further comment or even a backward glance, she runs from the cavern. Go moves to go after her, but is stopped by a paw on his shoulder. Turning around, he sees Lucario shaking his head. "You'll only get lost if you go after her." While Go gapes at the revelation that this Pokemon, this fighting Steel-type Pokemon, has the power of telepathy, Lucario turns to the group of three now on the ground. Rushing over, he kneels down in front of them. Cautiously, the three newcomers approach until Lucario gestures for them to stop. Now that they are a little closer and the battle has stopped, they can hear the rapid, gasping breaths coming from the boy. Lucario slowly, carefully reaches out for where the Pikachu was desperately reaching for something that he couldn't reach. Taking hold of it, he pulls his paw back to reveal a small, white and gold box with a metal key in the side. Turning the key a few times, the soft sound of a music box begins to fill the cavern. Slowly, the boy's breath begins to even out as he shakily reaches out a hand each to grasp at Mew's back and Lucario's paw. After a few more moments, the boy fully calms down and the little group separates, though the Pikachu stays perched on the boy's shoulder. They turn to the trio, and then the boy bows deeply to them before he straightens up and taps his fist to his chest twice. "You may call me Wild. Thank you for helping us." And that, everyone, is where I'm going to be leaving the story for now. Join me next time as Ash's adventure truly begins. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.